The subway jolted to a stop. Doors hissed open, and 4 young men stomped in, loud, laughing, one of them chewing on a toothpick like it was a statement. Music blared from a speaker on someone's hip. Heads turned. Eyes dropped. Passengers tensed. They scanned the crowded car. Their attention locked on a quiet black man seated near the middle, dressed in a faded work uniform, suitcase tucked neatly by his feet, and a worn photo of a young child barely peeking from his chest pocket. The leader grinned. "Hey, my boy wants a seat. Move." The man looked up, polite, tired, steady. "Sorry. I'm staying." Wrong answer. Laughter exploded. One stepped forward. "What, you too good to stand like the rest of us?" Another thug kicked the suitcase, sending it tumbling down the aisle. A third unzipped it halfway, letting a shirt and a plastic lunch container spill out. The man leaned forward to stop it, but was met with a hand. A slap. Sharp, open-palmed, crack, across his face. It echoed off the steel walls like a gunshot. Then a shove. He hit the subway pole, forehead bumping metal, suitcase contents now scattered across the floor. The train fell into a hush. He reached for his bag. No one moved. Except one man. Jason Statham. He had been sitting quietly at the far end of the car, hoodie up, unreadable. Now, his seat creaked softly as he rose, slow, steady, like gravity had just shifted. He walked forward. "Come." Silent. The punks turned. One grinned. "Look at this." "You want next, old man?" Jason said nothing. He looked at the black man, still crouched, gathering spilled clothes with shaking hands. Then his eyes returned to the group, and his voice came low, focused. "You've got one chance to leave." A pause. "You already wasted it." Before we proceed, like and subscribe to catch Jason Statham's epic face-off with the subway bullies, and comment where you're watching from today. The subway car rocked gently along the rails, metal wheels whining through the underground dark. It was late evening in New York, the time when the city's chaos didn't stop, it just got quieter and colder. The train was full but not packed. Business jackets hung loose, backpacks rested between tired feet, and shoulders leaned into sleep. Conversations were hushed or non-existent. Eyes were glued to phones, or the floor, or the reflection in the window. No one was talking. But everyone felt the weight of the day. Unspoken tension hung in the stale air. Not fear, not panic, just that buzz of quiet calculation that all city dwellers know. Who's around me? What's the exit plan if things go wrong? In the corner of the car, Jason Statham sat slouched against the wall, hood pulled low. He looked like any other passenger coming home from work. Jeans, dark hoodie, no eye contact. But his eyes were not closed. They were watching. He scanned every reflection, tracked every movement without turning his head. He saw the bag under the bench, the flicker of the flickering light above the emergency panel, the way the guy across the aisle kept nervously adjusting his watch. And he saw the man. The black man sat just 3 seats down, early 30s, work uniform slightly faded at the collar, suitcase upright beside him, clean but scuffed. His posture was polite, composed. A laminated ID hung from his neck, and tucked in the corner of his breast pocket was a tiny, creased photo of a little girl. He was not bothering anyone. He was just tired. But even that, apparently, was too much. The doors hissed open at the next station, and with them, trouble stepped in. 4 of them. Young. Loud. Carrying that kind of energy that didn't care who was around. One wore headphones with no music playing. Another had his phone already out, camera app open like he expected a show. A third flicked a toothpick from his mouth and stepped into the car like he owned the floor. They were dressed clean but carried filth in their posture, entitlement worn like a jacket. One of them scanned the train. His eyes landed on the black man. He elbowed his friend. "Look at this dude. Prime seat, too." The other grinned. "Let's get comfortable." Passengers glanced, then looked away. Jason's jaw didn't move. But his hand, resting on his knee, curled ever so slightly into a fist. It had begun. "Move it, bro. We don't sit standing." The words dropped like poison. The black man looked up slowly, his tired eyes scanning the faces of the 4 thugs now crowding in front of him. His voice was calm, respectful. "I've had a long day. I'm keeping my seat." The leader cocked his head and smiled, fake and condescending. "A long day, huh? What are you, a CEO or something?" One of the others barked a laugh. "Look at his bag, man. Dude probably sells batteries door to door." The man didn't flinch. Just looked back down at the suitcase standing next to him. Still upright, still zipped. His fingers gripped the handle just slightly tighter. Another thug leaned in close, nose wrinkling. "Smells like cheap cologne and cheap food." Jason didn't move. But he was watching every step, every inch. The one with the camera took a step back, filming over his friend's shoulder. "This one's going viral. Hashtag, first class faker." Still, the man didn't stand. Didn't argue. Which made it worse. "Oh, I get it now," one of them said, circling the seated man. "You think because you're in a uniform, that makes you better than us? Bet he works security somewhere. Or delivery. Definitely not a manager." Another leaned close to his ear. "Maybe you got that suit at Goodwill. You frontin' like you got a career." They laughed again, louder, hungrier. The man turned his head just slightly. "Please. I'm not looking for trouble." One of them mimicked his tone. "Oh, please. He's got manners now." The leader stepped even closer, face inches away. "You on the wrong train, man. This ain't for people like you." Still no response. Jason's hands slowly left his lap and dropped to his sides. His fingers twitched, once. The man straightened his back. His breathing controlled. Then the phone guy chimed in again. "Yo, smile for the cameraman. Don't be shy." The man turned his head. "You should stop." It was the most dangerous thing he could have said. The leader's smile disappeared. He reached forward and slapped the man's cap clean off his head. The old, worn fabric fluttered to the floor like dignity being peeled away. The man instinctively leaned down, but one of them shoved him hard, slamming his shoulder into the cold subway pole with a hollow metallic clang. He stumbled back upright, breathing heavier now. The thug with the camera leaned down and kicked over the suitcase, its contents spilling, shoes, a crushed lunchbox, that faded photo of the little girl fluttering out and landing face up near a boot. No one in the car moved. No one spoke. The man stayed standing, barely, bracing himself against the pole. His eyes locked on that photo. And in that silence, someone exhaled, slow, measured, like a coiled spring shifting its weight. Jason was still seated, but barely. His posture had changed. One foot was now planted back. His shoulder dropped a fraction, lining up his spine. His breathing was slower, but deeper. His eyes didn't scan the group. He was locked in. Every breath. Every limb. Every stupid smirk. The slap. The spill. The suitcase. The boot pressing on that photo. That was it. His hand slowly closed into a fist, knuckles whitening under the cuff of his hoodie. No one noticed. Yet. The black man's hand reached slowly for his cap, eyes burning with quiet shame. Jason stood. No warning. No words. He stepped forward, calm as a midnight tide. One of the bullies turned and raised an eyebrow. "Oh look, we've got a backup dancer." Jason's voice was ice. "Pick up the suitcase." The air snapped. The mood shifted. And now, it was too late to walk away. Jason's eyes dropped to the spilled suitcase, shirts wrinkled, the photo of the child face up, dust smudging its corner. He looked back at the group. His voice came low. Focused. Controlled. "Pick it up. Apologize." The words weren't loud, but they cut through the subway hum like a scalpel. Clean. Inevitable. One of the bullies blinked. Another scoffed. Jason stepped forward again, closing the space. To him. Now. His tone wasn't angry. It was surgical. The leader of the pack tilted his head. "You serious, old man?" Jason's eyes didn't move from the victim. "You've got 5 seconds to be human," he said. "That's generous." A beat passed. Stillness spread. Jason's hands were loose at his sides, completely still but deadly in their calm. Passengers nearby looked over, but kept their distance. Jason wasn't posturing. He wasn't puffing his chest. He was inviting a decision, and silently hoping they would choose wrong. They did. The leader burst out laughing, sharp and theatrical, trying to shake off the chill that had just crept up his spine. "Ain't no way this guy thinks he's his dad." One of the others clapped mockingly. "Ah, look at this." White Knight jumps in to save Subway Steve Jobs. Another waved his phone. "We got a hero, folks. Hope the views are worth it." They circled Jason now, their movements a little too wide, a little too fast. They were nervous, but their pride was louder than their instincts. "You must have watched too many movies, bro," one jeered. "You think you scare us? This ain't a scene. This is real life." Jason tilted his head slightly. "I know," he said. "No more words. Just that." Around them, the subway car went still. A woman near the corner slowly slid her phone up to eye level. Another man tightened his grip on the pole, ready to duck or bolt. No one moved to help. No one told the punks to stop. They all knew the moment had changed, but they didn't know what it would become yet. A kid 2 seats away whispered, "I think that's Jason Statham." The man next to him whispered back, "That's not cosplay." Even those who didn't know his name knew the look. That weight. That stillness. The storm was coming, and the first drop was about to fall. The tension snapped. One of the bullies, the youngest, twitchiest, charged forward. He lunged for Jason's chest with both hands, like trying to shove him backward into a seat. Jason's body shifted like silk, fluid and practiced. He didn't step back. He stepped in. One arm came up, deflecting the thug's wrists sideways with an open palm. His other hand shot forward, a precision jab to the nose. Fast. Clean. Bone met cartilage with a pop. The thug recoiled, stumbling backward with a strangled yell, clutching his face. Blood burst from his nostrils, splattering his hoodie. The subway erupted, not in noise, but in movement. People gasped. Phones locked in. The bullies froze. Jason didn't change expression. He simply shifted his stance. Now it was clear, this wasn't going to be an argument. It was going to be a lesson. The blood had barely hit the floor when the second thug rushed forward, fury replacing his hesitation. He threw a wild punch, a looping haymaker aimed straight at Jason's jaw. Jason didn't flinch. He stepped inside the swing, catching the arm mid-air. His grip clamped around the wrist like iron. There was a brief pause, a beat, a flicker in time, then a sharp, twisting torque. Crack. The wrist snapped with a sound that made half the car wince. The thug howled, dropping to one knee, cradling the useless arm. But Jason wasn't finished. While the kid was still recoiling, Jason drove a savage knee into his ribs. Once, twice, hammering bone and breath in the same motion. The kid collapsed sideways, gasping like a fish out of water. Another attacker surged from behind, trying to grab Jason around the waist. Jason dropped low and ripped free with an elbow hook, catching the kid's temple as he turned. The scream got cut short. Jason didn't wait for anyone to recover. He was already moving. The next thug charged straight ahead, braver or dumber than the rest. Jason met him with zero hesitation. He grabbed the punk's jacket mid-rush and twisted his momentum sideways, slamming him shoulder first into the subway pole. The metal rang like a gong as the thug crumpled to the floor. Before he hit the ground, Jason had already turned. The one with the camera tried to run. Jason wasn't having it. He lunged, caught the back of the guy's hoodie, and yanked him back mid-stride. The thug stumbled, and Jason drove a flat elbow into his spine, sending him crashing chest-first into a row of plastic seats. Passengers ducked, screamed, scrambled to the corners. Jason stood tall in the center of the car, alone, surrounded by groaning bodies and the wreckage of shattered ego. Then came the leader. Rage in his eyes, jaw clenched, both fists up like he knew what he was doing. He circled Jason like a dog looking for an opening. Jason just watched. Dead still. The leader shouted something unintelligible and charged, throwing a combo, jab hook jab. Jason ducked, parried the second strike, and slammed his forehead forward, ahead but straight to the bridge of the nose. Crunch. Blood poured instantly. The leader stumbled backward, but Jason grabbed his shirt, turned, and slammed him full force into the subway doors. The thud shook the train. Jason kept moving. He didn't give pain time to settle. Jason now moved like a machine, every step calculated, every move tight and devastating. One punk tried to stand again, woozy and desperate. Jason walked over and hammered a sharp elbow across the jaw, dropping him instantly. The boy hit the floor face first and did not move again. Another got to his feet behind Jason, reaching into his coat. Jason didn't wait to see what was coming. He spun, grabbed the attacker's arm, and swept his legs with a low kick, slamming him down hard, back first against the floor. Jason followed with a brutal knee to the stomach, knocking the air out of him in a choking gasp. The camera guy tried crawling away. Jason stepped on the phone, crushing it beneath his boot, and stared down at him. Not today. Then turned his attention back to the last one still standing, the leader. He had wiped the blood from his face. He was panting. And now, he was scared. Jason didn't say a word. He just raised one hand and gestured him forward. The train screeched as it neared the next stop. The leader screamed and lunged again, arms flailing, rage blinding. Jason sidestepped easily and planted his foot. A perfect roundhouse kick landed flush on the side of the punk's head. He spun, stumbled, and Jason stepped in with a brutal right hook to the gut, folding him in half. Then, grabbing the back of his neck, Jason dragged him forward. The subway doors opened with a hiss, and Jason launched him straight out of the car. The thug hit the station floor with a heavy smack, rolling across the tiles before slamming into a pillar. People on the platform screamed and scattered. Inside the train, silence fell. The rest of the gang lay broken, moaning, coughing, some out cold. Jason looked around once, eyes calm, breathing steady. He picked up the photo of the little girl from the floor and gently placed it back in the man's suitcase. Then he walked to his seat, lowered his hood again, and sat. No words. No gloating. Just justice. Delivered. Jason looked down at the man still kneeling, slowly gathering his belongings with trembling hands. The subway was quiet now, just the faint hum of the rails and the shallow groans of the punks sprawled across the floor. Jason bent down and picked up the man's suitcase. He unzipped it, gently refolded the shirt, slid the framed photo back into its inner sleeve, and zipped it shut again. Then he reached out, steady, palm open. The man hesitated, breath shaky, eyes still wide with shock. Jason gave a single nod. No rush. No pity. Just an offer. The man took his hand. Jason pulled him up with calm strength. Not a jerk, not a scene. Just help. You okay? Jason asked, his voice quiet, meant for one person, not the car. The man nodded slowly. Yeah, I think so. Jason handed him the suitcase. They won't bother you again. The man swallowed hard. Thank you. I didn't know what to do. Jason's reply was simple. You didn't have to. Then he turned away. The train car, once filled with stifled fear and cowardly silence, was now buzzing with something different. Phones that had been held up to record the chaos were slowly being lowered, some locked, others still rolling. Passengers whispered among themselves. A few looked stunned. A few ashamed. Most just stared at Jason. One woman near the back, maybe in her 60s, nodded slowly. Not out of surprise, but out of recognition. She had seen his movies. She knew the look. She knew that wasn't a stunt double. Another man, a blue-collar worker in a neon vest, leaned to his friend and muttered, "Dude, that's Jason Statham." The friend blinked. The transporter guy? Yeah, that was him. No one clapped. No one tried to shake his hand. But a space opened for him naturally. No one blocked his path. No one dared ask for a selfie. They just watched. In awe. In silence. Some now understanding that not all heroes wear badges, or announce themselves when they rise. At the next stop, the doors slid open, and 2 transit cops stepped into the car, radios buzzing lightly, eyes already wide at the scene. They paused at the sight of the wreckage, broken punks groaning on the floor, a blood-smeared pole, and a crowd unusually silent for New York. One officer stepped forward, hand near his belt. What happened here? No one answered at first. Then the man Jason had helped spoke up. They assaulted me. He stopped them. He gestured toward Jason. Jason, hoodie still up, gave a single nod. No emotion. No panic. One of the cops looked at him. Recognition flickered, but he didn't press it. Jason stepped forward, calmly handed over the crushed phone still lying on the floor. Everything you need's in that, he said. The cop took it, checked the camera still open, and nodded. Jason was already walking toward the door before anyone asked another question. He did not wait for applause. He did not wait for permission. Back on the platform, Jason walked slowly. No one followed him. He adjusted his coat, rolled his sleeves back down, and slipped quietly into the crowd of exiting passengers like he had never been there at all. A few heads turned. A few eyes widened. But no one dared stop him. He passed a mural painted on the subway wall, an old one, faded with time. It showed a line of people standing strong. Soldiers. Workers. Teachers. Ordinary heroes. Jason glanced at it once, then kept walking. He didn't check behind him. He didn't look for thanks. His pace was even. Measured. Each step echoing softly against the concrete. By the time the crowd behind exited and looked down the corridor, he was gone. No cape. No badge. No catchphrase. Just silence. And the memory of what happens when a man who does not need to speak finally stands. Some people think strength is about volume. The louder you speak, the more people you can scare. The bigger your crew, the smaller others will feel. They believe control comes from fists, fear, and intimidation. But they are wrong. Real strength isn't loud. It doesn't shove its way into a room. It sits quietly in the corner. It watches. It gives people a chance to be decent. And only when that chance is wasted, does it rise. What happened on that subway wasn't about bravado. It wasn't about heroism or making a scene. It was about something older. Something deeper. Dignity. A working man, tired after a long day, deserved the same peace as anyone else. He didn't ask to be protected. He didn't cry for help. But in a world full of noise, someone heard the silence. Jason Statham didn't rise because he had something to prove. He rose because someone else needed to sit in peace. He didn't throw punches to feel powerful. He did it because a line was crossed. And real men don't let that happen. Not on their watch. You do not need to fight every battle. You do not need to respond to every insult. You do not need to prove your worth with every step. But when you choose to fight, make sure it's not for your ego. Make sure it's not for likes or applause. Make sure it's for someone who cannot fight back. Because real warriors don't walk into battle looking for glory. They walk in when no one else will. Jason Statham didn't fight to impress a train full of strangers. He fought to remind the world that there are still men who do not film cruelty. They end it.